Is emotional numbness really a choice, or is it something that happens after too much pain? This question digs deep into the human experience. It's about the emotional distance we create, the walls we build to protect ourselves from feeling what we believe we cannot handle anymore. It's about the crushing weight of the past, the scars that shape how we experience the world. For many, emotional numbness is not a deliberate decision, but rather a survival mechanism. It's the body's way of saying, "I cannot bear another ounce of pain." It's the mind's desperate plea for relief. Yet, when we numb ourselves, we also numb the possibility of healing. We lose the ability to feel the joy we once knew, the connections we once had. What we're left with is a hollow existence, drifting through life without truly living. The choice to become numb may seem like a way to avoid further hurt, but in reality, it often keeps us locked in a cycle of pain. The more we shut down, the harder it becomes to reconnect with our emotions, our true selves, and those around us. It's like wearing a mask, pretending everything is fine, while inside we are slowly fading. The question is, what happens when the numbness becomes the only thing we know? Does it protect us, or does it slowly destroy us from the inside out? It's a silent battle we fight every day, between the desire to protect ourselves and the need to feel, to truly live again. The truth is, we don't always get to choose our emotional responses. Sometimes, life's hardships choose them for us. But in choosing numbness, we may not be protecting ourselves from pain. Instead, we could be locking ourselves in a prison of our own making, one where freedom seems impossible to find. At the core of emotional numbness lies the belief that we can't handle any more pain. This self-imposed numbness is often a shield, a way to survive in a world that has been too harsh. When a person has faced repeated rejection, loss, or trauma, it's easy to understand why they might shut off their emotions. However, this coping mechanism becomes a trap. What begins as a form of protection against overwhelming feelings soon transforms into a barrier, isolating the person from the very emotions that could help them heal. The deeper the pain, the more tempting it becomes to retreat inward, to avoid the messiness of vulnerability. Yet, by doing so, they deny themselves the ability to fully experience life. The joy, the warmth of connection, the relief of letting go, all of these are out of reach. The numbness becomes a prison that keeps them stuck in their past, unable to move forward. In their mind, the world becomes a place filled with danger and discomfort, a place where they can't afford to feel. But this avoidance comes at a cost. The person may start to question their own worth. They may wonder if anyone truly sees them, or if they are just invisible in a sea of people. They may crave connection but find it difficult to open up, fearing that the pain of rejection would shatter the fragile wall they've built around their heart. This inner conflict only deepens the isolation. The longer they stay numb, the harder it becomes to remember a time when they felt alive, when they believed they could experience true happiness. The numbness has blurred the lines between who they were and who they've become. They might even start to forget what it felt like to dream, to hope for a better tomorrow. Yet, this numbness is not permanent. Beneath the surface, the person longs for release. They crave to feel something again, but the fear of pain keeps them locked in place. It's as though they're trapped in an emotional stasis, waiting for a sign, a moment, a reason to break free. But breaking free requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires trust. Without trust, they remain stuck in their own emotional limbo. The paradox here is that by protecting themselves from pain, they are also preventing their own healing. The numbness may offer short-term relief, but in the long run, it only deepens the wound. What they don't realize is that the path to true healing lies in embracing their pain, facing it head-on, and allowing themselves to feel again. Only by doing so can they reconnect with the world, with others, and with themselves. The internal conflict of this character stems from the deep, unacknowledged needs within them, a constant battle between what they desire and what they believe they can never have. They crave connection, understanding, and love, but their past experiences have convinced them that these things are not for them. This disconnect is not just emotional. It's an ongoing psychological struggle that makes them question their worth. They want to feel alive, to experience the warmth of affection and trust, yet they feel as though they are undeserving of such things. The constant rejection, the neglect, and the isolation they've faced have convinced them that it is safer to remain emotionally detached. They have built walls around themselves, not out of desire, but out of fear. The fear of further hurt, of being rejected once again, keeps them from reaching out. They desire to be seen and heard, but they struggle to make themselves visible. Inside, they long for acceptance, for someone to look beyond their exterior and recognize the person they still are underneath all the armor. But the fear of rejection is paralyzing. It is a cycle that traps them. They hide to protect themselves, but by hiding, they only make it more difficult to connect with others, which reinforces their belief that they are unworthy of love and companionship. They are stuck between the desire for closeness and the need to protect their heart from further emotional damage. This conflict is exacerbated by a deep-rooted sense of inadequacy. They have internalized the message that they are not enough, that no matter how hard they try, they will never be worthy of the affection and understanding they so desperately need. This belief creates a barrier that prevents them from taking the necessary steps toward healing. It's as if they are constantly holding themselves back, afraid to move forward for fear of more disappointment. This is not just about emotional numbness. It is about a deep-seated need that goes unfulfilled because they believe they are incapable of fulfilling it themselves. They want to change, to feel again, to trust again, but they don't know where to begin. Every time they try to reach out, the walls go up, and the self-doubt takes over. The very act of vulnerability, which could lead to healing, becomes an insurmountable obstacle. The internal struggle is relentless, a push and pull between wanting to be free and fearing the consequences of freedom. They are caught in a constant loop, a cycle of self-protection that prevents them from receiving the love and validation they need. This lack of fulfillment only deepens their sense of loneliness and reinforces the belief that they are destined to remain in this emotional void, forever stuck in a place where their needs go unmet. The turning point in this character's journey comes when they are forced to confront the very thing they've been avoiding, their own vulnerability. For so long, they have kept themselves emotionally closed off, believing that if they didn't feel, they wouldn't have to suffer. Yet, there comes a moment, often triggered by a seemingly small event, that forces them to recognize the depth of their isolation. It could be a fleeting moment of kindness from a stranger, a glimpse of someone else's emotional connection, or perhaps a sudden reminder of the love they once had but lost. This moment shatters their carefully constructed walls and brings to the surface the pain they have long suppressed. It is in this instant that they realize how much they have been avoiding, how much they have been missing, and how deeply they long for connection. But this recognition is not a simple epiphany. It is filled with fear and resistance. They have lived so long in numbness that the idea of feeling again seems overwhelming. The walls they built for protection have become their prison, and breaking free means opening themselves up to the possibility of pain once more. This conflict creates a battle within them, as they must decide whether to stay in the safety of their emotional numbness or to take the terrifying step of embracing their feelings. The trigger forces them to question the very foundation of their emotional survival strategy. It becomes clear that in order to heal, they must let go of the armor they've relied on for so long. The problem is that this process requires trust, both in themselves and in others. For so long, they have believed that their emotions are too dangerous to trust. They have been conditioned to believe that feeling will only lead to hurt, so they built a fortress around themselves. But now, they must face the truth. Without vulnerability, there is no way to truly heal. This realization is both a relief and a terrifying burden. It opens up the possibility for change, but it also forces them to acknowledge just how deep their wounds really are. The moment of vulnerability becomes both the trigger for their potential healing and the source of their deepest fear. They have to confront the reality that letting go of their numbness means facing the painful memories and emotions they've spent so long running from. The emotional numbness that once seemed like a safe refuge is now the thing that holds them back from experiencing a full, meaningful life. This moment of truth, though daunting, is the catalyst that pushes them toward growth. It's not an easy journey, and the fear of vulnerability will continue to haunt them. But this trigger marks the beginning of their struggle to break free from the chains of emotional numbness and begin the painful but necessary process of healing. The moment of emotional collapse begins when the weight of years of numbness becomes unbearable. The character, who once believed they could survive without feeling, now finds themselves overwhelmed by the very emotions they tried to suppress. This sudden flood of feelings brings a deep sense of vulnerability, a feeling of being exposed in ways they've never been before. The numbness, which once seemed like a shield, now feels like a prison. The walls they built to protect themselves from the world now restrict their ability to live fully. The emotional shutdown, once a method of survival, becomes a barrier to growth and connection. At first, the overwhelming emotions feel like a tidal wave, crashing down with no warning. They feel everything at once: anger, sadness, fear, loneliness, regret, all of it swirling together in a chaotic storm. It is not just the pain of the past that resurfaces, but also the fear of the future, the fear that they are too broken to heal, too distant from others to reconnect. The process of feeling again is not a simple return to normalcy. It's an unraveling of years of emotional neglect, a painful realization that they have not been living, they have only been surviving. They feel lost, like a person who has been drifting through life without a compass, unsure of where they are or where they are going. The walls they built to shield themselves from hurt have left them disconnected from the world. Now, as they begin to face their emotions, they must confront the painful truth. The numbness was never a solution. It was a temporary escape, but it came at the cost of real connection and self-understanding. The collapse is not just emotional. It is a collapse of everything they thought they knew about themselves and how they should live. In this moment, they are forced to question everything. Who are they really? How have they allowed themselves to become so detached from their emotions, from others, and even from their own needs? The internal breakdown is profound, but it is also the beginning of a transformation. It marks the point where they can no longer ignore the pain, and perhaps, for the first time, they are willing to face it. The fear of vulnerability and emotional exposure is real, but the alternative, staying numb and disconnected, is no longer an option. What was once an act of self-preservation becomes an act of self-destruction. In this moment of collapse, the character faces the greatest challenge of all, choosing to rebuild themselves from the emotional wreckage they have long avoided. This is the beginning of a new journey, one where they must embrace their pain in order to heal, and where they must take the first step toward truly living. The long-term psychological consequences of emotional numbness are profound and far-reaching. The characters' years of emotional detachment have shaped their identity in ways they may not even fully understand. For so long, they have lived in a state of self-protection, believing that shutting down their emotions was the only way to survive. However, this coping mechanism has slowly eroded their sense of self-worth, leaving them disconnected not only from others, but from their own feelings and desires. The impact of this detachment manifests in various ways. On one hand, the character may feel as though they are merely going through the motions of life, unable to experience joy, sorrow, or any of the other emotions that make life rich and meaningful. This emptiness creates a constant, nagging sense of dissatisfaction. They may find themselves unable to engage in relationships, either because they cannot trust others or because they no longer know how to connect emotionally. As a result, the character becomes isolated, and their world becomes smaller, limited to their own internal struggles. On the other hand, this emotional numbness can breed resentment. The character may harbor deep-seated anger toward the world for being so unkind, or even toward themselves for allowing this disconnection to persist for so long. This resentment builds silently, festering beneath the surface, affecting their behavior and interactions with others. Over time, they may find it harder to be vulnerable, even in the rare moments when they want to open up. This creates a vicious cycle. The more they resist emotional intimacy, the more isolated they become, and the deeper their sense of disconnection grows. The long-term effects are not limited to their personal relationships. The character may also find it difficult to make decisions or pursue their passions. Without a strong emotional connection to themselves, they lack the motivation and drive that would otherwise propel them forward. This lack of direction can cause them to drift aimlessly, feeling as though they are stuck in a never-ending loop of indecision. Their self-esteem may continue to erode, as they struggle with the belief that they are not worthy of love, happiness, or success. The emotional numbness that once served as a shield now holds them hostage. Even when opportunities for healing or growth arise, the character may find it difficult to trust in them. The fear of feeling too much, of being hurt once again, prevents them from stepping into the vulnerability required to embrace change. The consequences of this emotional shutdown are not just immediate, but they build up over time, creating an internal landscape of fear, confusion, and isolation that becomes increasingly difficult to navigate. The character may reach a point where they can no longer ignore the long-term effects of their emotional numbness, but by then, it may feel like an insurmountable obstacle. What once seemed like a necessary defense mechanism has become a barrier to living a fulfilling, meaningful life. The emotional isolation this character feels is not just a fleeting experience. It's a deep, ingrained part of their existence. The overwhelming sense of abandonment they carry shapes how they see the world, constantly reminding them that they are alone. It's a loneliness that runs deeper than just being by themselves in a room. It's the feeling that no one truly understands them, that they are disconnected from everyone around them. This feeling is not just about physical distance, but emotional distance as well. The character yearns for connection but believes, deep down, that they don't deserve it. They have spent so much time shutting themselves off, both out of fear and self-protection, that they have lost the ability to reach out when they need help the most. It's this profound isolation that fuels their belief that they are not worthy of love or affection. Their sense of abandonment is not just about being neglected by others, but also about neglecting themselves. This emotional neglect creates a void that they struggle to fill, no matter how much they may try. They may go through the motions of life, pretending to be fine, but deep down, they are consumed by a sense of being misunderstood. It's as if they are speaking a language that no one else can hear, desperately trying to communicate their pain, yet constantly being ignored or dismissed. The people around them may not even realize the depth of their internal struggle, making the loneliness even more unbearable. The character's emotional numbness is not a choice, but a survival mechanism, born out of a deep fear of being hurt again. They have shut off their emotions as a way to avoid the overwhelming pain of rejection, yet this very numbness is what keeps them from forming meaningful connections. The isolation they experience is both self-imposed and a consequence of their past. They feel as though they are trapped in a cycle where they are unable to break free from their own emotional walls. The more they isolate themselves, the more they reinforce the belief that no one will ever care enough to reach out. They see others connecting, forming relationships, and experiencing love, but they feel like an outsider, watching from a distance, unable to join in. It's not that they don't want to be seen, to be loved, but they have convinced themselves that they are unworthy of such things. They live in constant fear that if they let their guard down, they will be rejected, leaving them more alone than before. The loneliness is suffocating, but the fear of vulnerability keeps them locked in place. This emotional disconnect makes it hard to move forward in life. They may find it difficult to pursue their goals or take risks, as the fear of failure and rejection looms over every decision they make. They feel trapped in their own emotional prison, unable to break free. And yet, despite all this pain, there is a flicker of hope, a small part of them that longs for connection, for understanding, for the acceptance they have been denied for so long. The journey toward healing is never easy, especially for someone who has spent so much of their life avoiding the pain of vulnerability. The character has been emotionally numb for so long that the idea of opening up seems impossible. Yet, deep down, there is a desire to feel again, to connect with others in a meaningful way. This inner conflict creates a tension that is hard to ignore. On one hand, they yearn for love, understanding, and acceptance, but on the other hand, they fear the rejection that may come with letting their guard down. It's a constant push and pull between the desire for connection and the fear of abandonment. The character longs to be seen for who they truly are, but they have convinced themselves that no one will ever truly understand them. The fear of being misunderstood, of being judged or ignored, is deeply ingrained in their psyche. This fear keeps them locked in a cycle of isolation, even though they desperately want to break free. The loneliness they feel is not just about being alone. It's about the emotional distance they have placed between themselves and the rest of the world. It's the feeling that no matter how hard they try, they can never truly reach anyone, nor can anyone reach them. This emotional distance becomes a wall they cannot tear down, no matter how much they wish to. At the same time, the character is constantly battling the belief that they are unworthy of love and affection. They've spent so much time in emotional isolation that they've convinced themselves they don't deserve anything better. The fear of abandonment runs deep, making them hesitant to trust others, even when it seems safe to do so. The constant cycle of longing and fear creates a profound sense of confusion and frustration. They want to be vulnerable, to let others in, but they cannot shake the belief that doing so will only lead to pain. They are caught in a paradox. The more they isolate themselves, the more they reinforce the belief that they are unworthy of connection. Yet, the more they long for connection, the deeper the loneliness grows. It's as if they are trapped in a never-ending cycle of self-doubt and emotional withdrawal. Despite all of this, there is a glimmer of hope. The character is beginning to realize that the key to healing lies in breaking down the very walls they've built to protect themselves. They must confront their fears, their past hurts, and their feelings of inadequacy in order to move forward. It will be a difficult and painful journey, but the possibility of connection, of being truly seen and understood, is worth the risk. For the first time, they can see the path ahead, and while it is uncertain, it holds the promise of a life free from the emotional numbness they have lived with for so long. The character stands at the crossroads of emotional healing, where the weight of their past is still heavy, yet the possibility of change glimmers just ahead. They have spent so much of their life locked in emotional numbness, convinced that feeling is too dangerous, too painful. Now, as they confront their fears and the hurt they have buried for so long, they must ask themselves, can they move beyond the isolation they have chosen? The process of healing is slow and uncertain, but it begins with a simple realization: they are not alone in their struggles. The loneliness that has defined their existence is not unique. Others, too, have faced the same emotional battles, and like them, they have struggled with feelings of abandonment, of being misunderstood. This realization begins to chip away at the walls the character has built, making them question whether it is truly worth it to continue hiding. The fear of rejection, of vulnerability, still lurks in the background, but it no longer has the same grip on them. The more they confront their feelings, the more they understand that feeling is not a weakness, it is a strength. The desire to be loved and accepted is not something to hide from, but something to embrace. The character realizes that they deserve love, not because they are perfect, but because they are human. For the first time in a long time, they begin to see themselves through a different lens. They are not the broken, unworthy person they once believed themselves to be. They are someone who has survived, someone who is capable of growth and change. This shift in perspective is powerful. It allows them to open up to the possibility of connection, to trust others, and to trust themselves. It doesn't mean that the journey will be easy, or that there won't be setbacks along the way, but the path forward is now clear. They begin to understand that their vulnerability is not a curse, but a bridge to the relationships they have longed for. As they slowly open up, they find that there are others who understand their pain, who see them for who they truly are, not the facade they have shown the world for so long. It is not an instant transformation, but a gradual process of shedding the layers of protection that have kept them isolated for so long. Each small step forward is a victory, a reclaiming of their emotional life. The character's journey is not just about overcoming their fear of vulnerability, but about learning to embrace their emotions as part of their humanity. They realize that their emotions, no matter how difficult, are what make them real, what make them connected to others. Through this process, they begin to heal, to rebuild their sense of self-worth, and to rediscover the joy that comes with genuine human connection. The road ahead may still be uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, they are no longer afraid to take the next step.